Today, I'm at the factory at Franklin with Calvin LeHew, a fascinating entrepreneur and co-author of Flying High. His unwavering belief that, as he says, you become what you think about, has motivated his physical, mental, and spiritual success and made him an important figure in the revitalization of historic Franklin, Tennessee. I'm Tai Chi. At 19, I was a superstar, and I was lost inside. I left it all behind, switched continents, and started all over. Years later, I found myself lost again, this time in the American dream. This is a story about awakening, about living the life you were created for, about going inward and discovering the joyous and purposeful person you and I are both meant to be. This is Waking Up in America. Calvin LeHew, what an honor to have you on my show. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
So, you know what I first want to share with you? That joy, I'm sure you know this, the joy when you are aware, when you become aware of just how crazy connected we all are, and how each of us has this like significant, amazing part in this bigger picture that we're all a part of. And the reason why I'm saying that is because just the connections, how I got connected to you and learned about your story and how it has effect on me, and how having Stowe on this show and now having you has effect on the viewers. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
It's just such a gift. So 2010, I think, was when I first came to Franklin, and I was working with Brian Lennox, a producer, and he brought me to the factory for lunch. And he told me how you had repurposed this old building, which we're in right now. My husband Matthew has always been really interested in repurposing old buildings, rather not me being from Europe. You know, we don't just knock off the old buildings. We breathe new life into them.
Yes.
And Brian then mentioned something to me, and I felt it, that it wasn't just the building that you built, but that you brought this spirit to the area.
One success led to another. Started off with small successes. When I was a teenager, my parents died, and then I had drugstores. My fraternity brother and I started a drugstore in Tallahassee, Florida, which led to a chain in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And we had problems, but we set our mind to do something, and that was the key, is setting your mind to do something. See it mentally, visualize it, and so one success with problems and all, with every adversity there is with it a seed of greatness, is one of my favorite sayings that I read in Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, Clement Stone, or someone.
Yes.
The interstate highway system came along. I was a page in the United States Senate in 1956-57 when Eisenhower introduced this bill for interstates. It was one of the greatest things that ever happened to our country. But it started killing little downtowns like Franklin and all over the United States.
Yes.
The Kmart, Walmart, Sears, and Dillard's went out to the interstate intersection, which is great. And I was president of the Chamber of Commerce here in our little town, and I had been over in Europe in the Tennessee Air National Guard. Fell in love with those little cobblestone streets, the baker living above the bakery shop, the sidewalk cafes.
Absolutely,
and
where the life is.
Yes. I said, guys, this is what we need to do. We can't compete with Kmart, Walmart, Sears, and so forth. And I couldn't sell it to them.
You couldn't sell it?
I could not sell it.
Interesting.
So I went up on Columbia Avenue across from the Carter House, and I built a little, what Southern Living did a big story on it. They called it a European village with a Southern flair. And it was 26 shops and restaurants, and it was the baker living above the bakery shop and the sidewalk cafe. It became the 7th largest tourist attraction in Tennessee.
We traveled for 13 years all over America, and I was so excited to see America. And mostly what I saw was the Kmarts and Walmarts and interstates. And I just can't thank you enough for seeing
That was Anytown, USA.
This. Yes. And my poor kids, after 7 years, they would be saying, we were here before. No, we haven't. But it looks just the same. So yes, and when I first came to Franklin, that's why we moved here. So you lose your parents when you were a teenager.
Yes, they both died of cancer.
Within very short period
Within
of time?
6 months of each other.
Amazing.
Yes.
And at that time, you were at the military school? Or
No,
something?
I thought I might be going to West Point.
Oh, that's right.
So I was at Swanee Military Academy for a year to get some military training and so forth, and that's when they both died. But I never did go to West Point. Mrs. Albert Gore, Al Gore's mother, was a friend of the family, so she invited me to come to Washington. And there I was a page in the United States Senate. First time in my life I'd ever worn a coat and tie. First time I'd ever been in an air-conditioned building. You talk about an awakening.
Because you were from
Out in Hillsborough, Leapers Fork.
And it's
I
a
was
little
born
farm
above
in-
our country store there. Mrs. Gore, I was there off and on 6 years, and she said, "You're not staying here unless you stay in school." So, because she knew my parents wanted me to
Right.
be the first LeHew to go to college.
Oh, they wanted you to be the first LeHew.
And I hated every day of
to go to
school.
college.
But
Why did you hate it?
I was very right-brained, creative, looking out the window when the teacher was speaking, and
You didn't want to be put in the box.
no, I was never in a box. I was always outside the box. All my life I've pushed the edge of the envelope, and I don't know if we'll get into it or not, but I've lived through 5 major plane crashes because I build and fly experimental aircraft as a hobby.
As a hobby.
And I like getting up there and looking down at the whole picture. I was raised in the Methodist church there at Hillsborough, Leapers Fork, and I had a lot of Jesus teachings.
Okay.
And it was in my subconscious that as a man thinketh, so is he. As we think, we become. And that resonated with me, and I started believing, and I heard too, these things you can do and even greater. Well, that
beautiful.
was a great auto-suggestion for me. So that had a big part of my life, and that I could do all things through Christ who strengthened me. That was embedded into my subconscious. And then when I went to Washington, Norman Vincent Peale I met. I met him personally.
Oh, you met him.
And read his book, The Power of Positive Thinking. It was all about the positive teachings of Jesus, not all this hellfire and damnation and you're going to hell if you don't do this
Yes,
and so
yes,
forth. So that helped me so much. And I would take the train up to New York and go to the Marble Collegiate Church where he preached. And I got to be personal friends with him later. And as a matter of fact, this is a side note, I started speaking about positive thinking and some of the success principles and so forth. And every time I would speak, I got little butterflies before you'd stand up there and get in the podium, you know. And I said, Dr. Peale, as many times as you speak all over the world and big audience and so forth, do you still get butterflies? He said, yes, Calvin, but the key is to get them to fly in formation.
Beautiful.
I thought, being a pilot, I loved that. So my life just was transformed from being a little country boy from Leapers Fork on into Washington. I got to meet 5 presidents, 3 of them on a personal daily basis before they became president, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, when I was a page in the Senate then. And it was just unbelievable what I went through there. And I did go on and graduate and to fulfill my parents' desire for me, even though I didn't want to. And then it was, what's next for me?
By the way, your story is so beautifully written in that Flying High book that you co-written with Stowe.
Yes.
Stowe Daly. Beautiful, beautiful. And at one point, you going through the power of positive thinking and with connecting with your faith. That's what I really love. And you say one of the first things, because I get a lot of viewers that watch the show and they say, well, how do I do this? How do I live the life I'm created for? What are the steps? Tell me how to do it. And you share a few secrets. And you say the number one thing is just to write it down.
Yes.
And so at that one point, you wrote down a goal to be a millionaire
At
the
age
of
35.
35.
Yes.
Okay. So how did that work
And
out?
I hit it at 33.
Oh, bummer.
And I was not any happier. I had
no.
leaky roofs, I had stopped up commodes, and I had wealth, but I wasn't any happier. That old song, who wrote it, is this all there is?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then, but it was the mental. It was, this stuff works. I wanted to do firewalking. Tony Robbins. The mind, is the mind that powerful that you can overcome and not burn your feet? So I went out to California and studied religions and all this stuff, and it is so. I'm more impressed with that than in accomplishing things like this. There is such a thing as the law of attraction that you hear about so much, but I would emphasize go in silence and be alone. I go to the woods. I go out to the timberland, which I own thousands of acres, and with my dog, and I'm alone there in nature. And it's like, get away from TV, the cell phone, all these mechanical devices and so forth, and get as close to nature. And I get into the silence, and I ask, what is my mission? What am I to do next? Where am I to go? And answers do come. That impulse happens, and that's the most rewarding thing now. To do something like this and not have to advertise. For 72 tenants came here in these 14 buildings here. This is one of 14 buildings, and there are larger buildings over here with the tenants. And it had to be artistic, creative, unique, musical food. I didn't want that Kmart, Walmart, Sears, Dillard's, and all the doctors, lawyers, and all. Right. I wanted the right brand, creative, music, artists, and those are the worst tenants you can have because they have a right brain and no left brain. Right. They don't know how to fill out a checkbook sometime and pay the rent. But I knew that. But it started making millions after a while. Now, a lot of problems, but with every adversity there is with it a seed of greatness.
Absolutely.
When you have a heart attack and fall down, don't get down in doom and gloom. Look, it may transform your life.
Yes.
So I think every adversity that I've ever had and seen other people had, it was actually a good thing because it stopped you and made you think and go a different route.
Yes, I think of it as that whisper deep within where, I think of it as where God can really speak to us and where all the noises around are silenced. So we don't set our goals or our dreams influenced by what others want us, what they have to sell us or want us to desire. And that's why that place of silence is so important. And when we connect into it willingly and open our souls, then we can awaken and serve. And like you said, serve. See Franklin thriving.
Yeah. When you said serve, that brings up one thing I've learned in life. It's a universal law. You got to give in order to receive.
Absolutely.
And that's in material things. If you wanted to be a millionaire, you've got to give a product or service out there that can bring back compensation. Another thing, too, that I want to emphasize, too, that the ego, my success brought me more success, and I was on the front page of the paper and all. At one time, I was on 14 board of directorships, civic, social, banks, and so forth. I wasn't any happier. But my ego, that's something that when you start accomplishing and you're a millionaire and all this stuff, your ego gets up there, and it is not a good thing to have. One thing I've also learned in all of this, there's the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. I was so much into the physical, and then later in the mental and the ego and all these things. But now I seek the spiritual. It is the invisible. It is more important than the physical things.
Yeah.
Our minds send out vibrations. I'm on the board of directors of the Institute of Noetic Science, which Dr. Edgar Mitchell founded when he was walking on the moon. He had this, what we'd call a religious experience when he got back in the capsule to come back to space Earth.
Yes.
That he was one with everything, the molecules of his body and Earth and all. And he resigned from NASA and formed the Institute of Noetic Science. And I joined that when I was living out in California to study all of this mental stuff and firewalking and all. And it helped change my life. So there was one board, I told my wife, when we live out in California, I'm going to resign all those boards. And I did. I'm not joining anymore.
Right.
But the whole time I was out there, I told her there was one board I really would like to be on. And I just put it in my back consciousness, and I still was a member of their organization, but not on the board. And about 3 months ago, after being released of all this and all, I get this call from Institute of Noetic Science, the president. Would you like being on our board of directors? Oh, yes. And it was a wish come true.
Yes.
And we're studying the mind and how powerful it is. The science part of the mind, and it's religion and science are coming together.
Oh, that was my question. Like, does it mean that, if I, because I do, talk about it with a lot of people, does it mean that if I start, discovering or learning or studying the power of positive thinking, that I'm going to lose my religion, that I'm going to have to leave my church, my faith community?
So what? I left my church and I didn't leave my teachings of Jesus.
Right.
Jesus Christ to me is still the greatest teacher I've ever had.
Yeah.
These things you can do as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. We become what we think about, be it negative or positive. Our thoughts send out vibrations and can affect flowers, anything, animals. Animals pick up on our thoughts, I found out. It's just unbelievable. We're doing research in California now about this, along with some other institutions, about how powerful the mind is. What you think about, you bring about. It's called the law of attraction. I started thinking, yes, I had unbelievable problems here. The asbestos here, the cleanup, the environmental alone was $1 million to clean up this. I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't pay but $1 million for this 46 acres and 17 buildings, 350,000 square feet. But if I had seen the negatives, in college they taught me 4 things in real estate when you see a building or real estate. Do a feasibility study, market analysis, traffic counts, and so forth. None of that fit in with this. 4 banks turned me down and said, no way are we going to loan you money on something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I got it anyway because of my positive thinking. I know we can do it, not just personality, ego, Calvin. No.
But it also sounds to me that's kind of a power of prayer, when you
Yes,
just
that is
know
prayer.
that God will come through. I've seen people, heal from physical illnesses
Yes.
because of that kind of.
Absolutely.
You set your mind. I'm not going to doubt. I know. God will deliver, and it's we're all different and we're all on different journeys, and I know for some people it's very difficult to make these leaps, especially if we have our lives so deeply rooted, in a tradition.
Yes.
Of certain, and it's for me it's like marriage. So you go through tough times. You ask questions. You renew the communication, and you stay in your union. You don't have to. Run away. I ran away, from my fame, my success, my career, because I didn't know what to do with it. And I came to America to find this freedom, like we were talking about, to just be completely free and open to what, I believe God has in store for me and what I was created to be.
I now realize that my Uncle Earl in Lebanon, Tennessee, had about 20 acres, a cow, some pigs, and chickens. I didn't look down on him, but I thought, I want to be something more than Uncle Earl. But you know what now? I have a farm out here. I love getting on the tractor with my dog and doing farm work like Uncle Earl.
Oh.
We don't have to be millionaires or top of the charts and so forth, as you found out. That's not where it's at. It's, yes, being ourselves, feeling comfortable inside, not holding grudges against other people, having love, forgiveness. I can't say any more than that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, because with that, we can serve and we can make our world a better place.
Yes.
Thank you so much. What else to say? See you again on Waking Up in America.
not born brave. I walked in shaky shoes, so afraid of falling, failing, scared to speak my truth. But life took a 2x4 and knocked me from the nest. I closed my eyes and feared the worst and never would have guessed I'd be